Good day, I welcome everyone who has joined us. My name is Olga Tamanova, and I'm happy to welcome you in the Media Center Ukraine today. So today our first briefing is devoted to the situation at our borders. So we have Andrii Demchenko in our studio. He is the spokesman of the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine. We'll be speaking about that directly. But first of all, hello Andrii, good day. I would like to start our conversation with the latest news, which have been spread and discussed a lot in our media, including this piece of news is exactly about the trainings which Belarus has had military exercises closer to our borders. What do you know about that? What has taken place? What kind of trainings and how we observed that? Well, in fact, first of all, we need to understand that for us, first of all, this issue of the border with Belarus is important. This direction is full of threats. And for us, as we do not pose threat for Belarus, but we remember the directions where the Russian troops invaded from, how Belarus opened its borders for the Russian troops. So then we are strengthening this direction in the engineering and fortification sphere, and obviously we have enough of units which are holding this direction. But Belarus altogether is constantly trying to put responsibility onto Ukraine's shoulders, as if we pose threat for Belarus. So as for military exercises, I guess those are the first ones this year, but I guess we'll see them more than once on the territory of Belarus with different components of their armed forces or security and defense sector, because in 2022 and 2023 and 2024, the military exercises never stopped in Belarus. So the trainings which were announced and which have to go on till the end of January, they do not pose additional threat for us. Because Belarus, besides conducting permanently different exercises, we still remember also previous years when such military exercises took place with the Russian units altogether. And let me add that as of now, the Russian troops, the strike formation, are not present on the territory of Ukraine. The terrorists moved within the rotations back to their territory. So they did not bring any new ones. So now Belarus is helping Russia in a different way. Since 2022, trying to put responsibility on Ukraine's shoulders, Belarus again declared that they are strengthening their borderline directions in the border with our country, and they even keep their certain military units there. But their number is not significant, and the number of soldiers is insignificant there as well. They have permanent rotations there, so we need to be sober about this situation. Obviously, let me mention again, this direction is important for us. We need to have strong defense positions there, and we have that. And we shouldn't delve into panic, because whether the situation can be changed and whether it can become hazardous, the intelligence units and the State Border Service are following the situation, including the Ministry of Defense, so that we could adequately respond if the situation changes. What's the number of the soldiers is involved in these military trainings, and do you register the presence of Russian troops there? The presence of Russian troops is not registered there, and these military exercises with the units of territorial defense, they planned to involve the reserve. So in the close proximity to our border, we cannot see them. I'm not sure that they would even use some equipment for these military exercises. This is just the demonstration by Belarus that they are strengthening their defense capacity as if Ukraine poses threat for them. So they will support that situation further on. Sumy region, that is a complicated situation. We can see that the enemy is going on with the shelling. And recently one of your press officers gave the comment where he mentioned that almost all of the borderline settlements of Sumy region in the border with Russia are erased from earth, and the enemy is destroying everything there. What is now there? What is the current situation, and how the dynamic dynamic of shelling is changing. And as for the borderline area, whether really the destroyed area is so of high scale, what is taking place there, and how could we make these areas safe, including the people? Do people still stay there? For multiple times, the local authorities, including the previous years, they urged the local population, especially the residents of the borderline areas, to leave these areas, especially the ones which are closer to Russia, because the shelling which is conducted by Russia against the territory of Chernihiv, Sumy, Kharkiv regions is rather numerous, and they are only increasing the number of strikes using mostly artillery. Now they are using actively drones and UAVs, in fact, and as of Sumy region, the shelling is taking place with the help of their aviation. Recently, some time ago, we could see certain activization of strikes within aviation against Chernihiv region, but during the last days, we don't register that. As for Sumy region, aviation is also used by our adversary to strike and to hit against us. And if we look at the quantitative indicators of the strikes which are conducted by the enemy, the lion's share is against the settlements. The enemy is trying to terrorize the local population of Ukraine, destroying the houses, destroying the infrastructure of these settlements. So obviously, until we have such a neighbor, for so far, if we have such aggression, the settlements, and in particular people who are living there, are under danger. If we again speak about the shelling, the majority of those cases are against Sumy and Kharkiv regions. There are fewer shellings against Chernihiv region, but still the terrorist country does that as well. If we speak about saboteur groups, what's the dynamic is there, and where do they work mostly? What do you follow? The enemy, besides the shelling, is still going on with their sabotage, and the threat for all above-mentioned three regions is relevant. However, again, if we compare 2023 and the beginning of 2024, the activity of the enemy's saboteur groups is lower, but the attempts of saboteurs to get into the country is still there, again in all of the three directions. Moreover, if we remember the cases in Chernihiv region, the enemy was trying to use saboteurs for informational psychological influence, mentioning that they could hang some flags of theirs or occupy some territories, though of course it was wrong. And all of the forces of Ukraine are countering any of the saboteurs. But Sumy and Kharkiv regions are against the directions where the enemy mostly is trying to use his saboteur groups so that they could get into our territory. Their mission is to find out the fortifications of Ukrainians, to mine the area so that our defenders could die on these explosives, and also they wanted to try the firearms against the positions of our guys. For the proper understanding, if we speak about 2014, how many attempts took place? And if we speak about 2025, have there been something like that? If we remember the beginning of Russian aggression, obviously saboteur intelligence groups of Russia were present as well. In Luhansk region and Donetsk region, such elements as saboteurs are used by the enemy during the whole period of aggression. Have there been such attempts during this year? Speaking about the current year, in Kharkiv region is Kharkiv region is the place where we could register the saboteur groups. Thank you. And I guess that we can move to a different topic. Let us speak about other borders of our country. Recently, we left this kind of a period of finalized the Christmas festivities. What was taking place in the western borders? Has the passenger flow increased? What did you see there? Obviously, this period was peculiar because of the dynamic passenger flow. There have been days of peak loads, a kind of high indicators of border crossing per day, more than 150,000 per day just before the Christmas. There have been days when the passenger flow was decreasing, especially during the holidays. For instance, on the 25th of December, approximately 67,000 of people crossed the border in both directions, and on the 1st of January, the indicator was 32,000. So from 150,000 to 32,000, you can just compare what's the dynamic and difference, the peak and the decreasing tendency. Simultaneously, the passenger flow during all of these days is rather high, and it has started increasing since the 14th of December. And even during the weekend which we just had, we had the indicators at the level of approximately 105, 110,000 persons per day who crossed the borders in both directions. Before the Christmas, we could see mostly people incoming to Ukraine, and after the Christmas and till the New Year, people were leaving Ukraine. During the recent period, we don't see such a tendency, so we did not mention the majority of people arriving to Ukraine, though during the last 2 days, in Sunday and Monday, there have been 25,000 of people coming to Ukraine, not leaving Ukraine. December, as it is, as a month, observed the increase of 400,000 citizens who crossed the border, more than in comparison with November. And the overall indicator of crossing the border in December is 2.9 million persons. However, if we compare 2024 as a year and 2023, so the overall passenger flow was in fact at the same level. That is, more than 35 million citizens during the year crossed the border, arriving and departing. And during the last day, for instance, the dynamic of the passenger flow decreased to approximately 85,000 of border crossing in both directions. So I would say that further on, we will not observe the acute increase of the passenger flow for a certain period of time. If we speak about the today's situation at the border crossings, what is the current situation? Do we see any problematic issues? We do not see longer queues at the border as of today to leave Ukraine, where we can in fact see and inform the citizens what is taking place there. We do not see the overall queues. But if we look at the overall passenger flow, 50%, for instance, during 2024, more than 17 million crossed the border with Poland. And this is the direction where the passenger flow is, of course, the highest, and the queues can be the longest at some moment of time in a certain direction during the certain hour. We can have the biggest number of people. Still, during the recent days, the busiest directions could be queues to leave Ukraine. This is the border crossing Ust-Luh at Volyn and Krakovets, though other directions sometimes have zero indicators in queues or vehicles queues. So I can only recommend the people to be interested in the overall overload in each of the border crossings. We publish this information every 3 hours at our Facebook pages, and it is done just exactly so that people could choose the directions which are not that overloaded. If we speak about the violations of the border crossing, what was the end of 2024, speaking about the whole year? What's the statistics, first of all, and secondly, what are the biggest and most numerous violations and which types of them? Well, again, if we add the situation about the border crossings, in 2024, people who were rejected to leave Ukraine, those were approximately 59,000 of Ukrainian citizens. Mostly those are men, obviously, 18 to 60 years old, because those are the categories during the martial law are temporarily restricted to leave Ukraine. And they were not compliant with the conditions and categories of citizens who were allowed to leave Ukraine during the martial law. Obviously, some of them did not have enough of documents. Sometimes people just forgot the documents and to take them on the journey. Some of them did not comply with any conditions. Some people could not confirm the objective of their journey. That is also, for some categories, is compulsory by the rules of border crossing. As for different border crossings, we can still see the attempts of illegal border crossing. Every day we can find out 2 to 10 perpetrators who are trying to use fake documents or to falsify the conditions of their departure. Simultaneously, the majority of the attempts to illegally cross the border are documented beyond the crosser borders, that is, at the green area of the border. And such active directions with the biggest number of detention is the border with Romania and Moldova. As of Slovakia and Hungary, the dynamic is lower, and the least number of attempts is done at the border with Poland. Still, if we remember July, when the indicators of detention of perpetrators were the highest during 2024. Since then, in August and later, there was the tendency, the permanent tendency of decrease. If we compare December and November, the decrease of those who wanted to illegally cross the border has decreased for about 14%. And if we compare December with July, the decrease is 40%. Do you connect it with the weather conditions? Well, in August and September, the weather conditions were still helping to cross the border illegally and to plan that or to be willing to illegally cross the border without being afraid of weather conditions. But again, the dynamic was decreasing. Dynamics were decreasing, and recently it was also because of the weather conditions, which are not favorable to cross the border illegally and to plan it at least. But again, the majority of perpetrators do not plan that on their own. They are mostly going to the third parties, to the crime organized formations, which promise some help for the illegal border crossing. People pay money for that, and the sums of money can be from $5,000 to $20,000. However, the perpetrators do not consider one point. The organizers and the accomplices of these crime organizations don't care about life and health of those people. In spite of the mountainous areas where there is snow, where the weather is unfavorable, in spite of the fact that the water in the rivers is really cold, we still detain people at these directions which are sent there by the representatives of such illegal groups and formations. Do we have information for 2024? As we understand that for the majority, this illegal crossing has the tragic ending. So, do we have information how many people died in the process? We have the information during the whole martial law. The tragic cases when people lost their life because of such not well thought through cases is more than 50 people. As of the directions where again the people are sent by the organizers from the illegal formations, recently in the mountains we discovered one group of 3 perpetrators who in fact were even making their calls to all of the hotlines to be saved, to be rescued, because they lost their way in the mountainous area. They lost their way. And in fact, for about a week, they were wandering around. They were totally exhausted. Some of them were overfrozen, and again, they were deciding to do that. They had a frostbite, so they decided to take risks on their own. So the border officers and the rescuers who were involved in this rescue operation, they saved their lives. You said that very often the crime formations and organizations are involved in that. The people who do that, this kind of business, sending people to a different side. What number of formations or groups did you manage to stop this year? Do we have such statistical data? First, let us look at the whole period of martial law. The indicators which we have of the border state service in comparison with in cooperation with other law enforcement authorities, we revealed more than 750 groups. Approximately more than 350 of them were discovered in 2024. But recently, the police informed that we have the high-scale searches, so they revealed more than 50 schemes. They introduced and issued even more notices of suspicion to the organizers and accomplices who were planning or helping people to cross the border illegally. So they brought them to the border along the green area. Some people just created fake documents. So we also involved our operatives in these rescues and search operations, which were acting in 15 regions of the country to counter such perpetrations at the high scale. So our work will go on in this sphere, including when we detain the perpetrators at the border. We are actively checking them, who helped them in these illegal journeys. I thank you for the information. Dear colleagues, if you've got any questions, please take the mic. You have the opportunity to pose a question. There are no questions, Andrii. I would like to thank you that you joined us, joined our air, and I'd like to thank our defense and security forces, thanks to whom we can conduct this air. Let me remind you that our next air will be at 12, and we'll be speaking about the fuel market. We are finalizing 2024, and we'll speak about the perspectives of this year as of 2025. Thank you. Stay with us. We are working on together for the sake of our victory. Glory to Ukraine.